She sat on the scorching roadside for 10 days, guarding a green bag filled with everything she owned. When a stranger stole even that, she refused to move. Her family had told her to stay. But when I finally reached her and ran the tests, I discovered the heartbreaking truth. She wasn't forgotten. She was thrown away. I'll never forget the call that came in on July 14th. "There's a dog on Miller Road," the voice said. "She's been there for days, just sitting there with a plastic bag." When I pulled up to the location, the heat hit me like a wall. The asphalt shimmered, the air thick enough to choke on. And there she was, a black and white dog, ribs showing through her matted fur, pressed against the curb like she was glued to it. Next to her was a bright green plastic bag, knotted at the top. I approached slowly, expecting her to run, but she didn't move. Her eyes followed me, dull and exhausted, but her body stayed frozen in place. That's when I noticed the empty water bowl tipped on its side, the way her paws were cracked and bleeding, the way she trembled despite the oppressive heat. "Hey, girl," I whispered, kneeling down. "Let me help you." She flinched but didn't budge. I reached for the green bag, thinking maybe I could use it to gain her trust. Inside were toys, a squeaky duck, a frayed rope, a rubber ball. Everything was covered in dust, but I could still smell the faint scent of a home, someone's home. These were her belongings, her life.
A local resident approached me. "That bag used to be full," he said. "Some guy took most of it 3 days ago. She just watched him, didn't even bark. She's been waiting here for over a week." My heart sank. Waiting. She was waiting for someone to come back. I tried to coax her into my van, but the moment I moved toward her, she bolted, or tried to. Her legs buckled after 3 steps, and she collapsed onto the burning pavement. I scooped her up, feeling how light she was, how her heartbeat fluttered weakly against my hands. She didn't fight. She just stared past me, toward the road, like she was still searching for a car that would never return. We rushed to the clinic. The moment the air conditioning hit her, something in her let go. Her eyes rolled back, her body went limp, and the vet team swarmed around her, shouting instructions I could barely process. "She's crashing! Get an IV in now!" I stood there helpless, watching them fight to save a dog who'd spent 10 days being loyal to people who didn't deserve her. 12 hours later, she finally woke up. Still too weak to lift her head, still refusing food. The vet handed me the PCR results with a grim expression. "She's positive," he said quietly. "Advanced stage. Her spleen is swollen, her immune system is almost gone. Whoever left her, they knew. They knew she was sick, and they dumped her like trash." I looked at her through the kennel bars. This dog who'd guarded a plastic bag in 100-degree heat, who'd stayed loyal even after everything was stolen from her, who'd waited for a family that left her to die. "What are her chances?" I asked. The vet hesitated. Low, very low. I knelt down and pressed my hand against the kennel door. Her eyes met mine for the first time, not looking past me, but at me. "Then we fight," I said. Before I tell you about the battle that nearly broke us both, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support helps us save the dogs that others throw away. Let's make sure no animal is ever left waiting on a roadside again.
According to the witnesses I interviewed over the next few days, it happened on a Tuesday morning. A silver sedan pulled up to the curb on Miller Road, and a man stepped out. He opened the back door, and she jumped out eagerly, tail wagging, thinking this was just another trip to the park. But instead of a leash, he pulled out a green plastic bag, knotted tight, and set it on the ground beside her. He said something, the witnesses couldn't hear what, and then he got back in the car. She sat down, obedient, watching him, waiting for the next command. The car door slammed, the engine revved, and then he was gone. She didn't chase the car, she didn't bark, she just sat there, pressed against that green bag like it was an anchor, her eyes locked on the direction he'd driven. One witness told me she'd tried to approach with food on day 2, but the dog had growled softly, protecting the bag. Another said he'd seen her sniffing every car that passed, her whole body tensing with hope each time, only to deflate when the vehicle kept going. By day 4, she'd stopped reacting to the cars altogether. She just stared. The bag became her world. Inside were the remnants of a life, toys she'd once played with, scents she'd once known, proof that she'd belonged to someone. She guarded it like a soldier guards a post, because that's what loyal dogs do. They follow orders, even when those orders are designed to kill them.
On day 7, a man walked past her. I know this because a local shopkeeper saw it happen and later identified him from security footage. He stopped, looked at the dog, looked at the bag. She watched him with those exhausted eyes, too weak to even lift her head anymore. He crouched down, grabbed the green bag, and walked away. The shopkeeper said she made a sound, not quite a bark, more like a whimper, but she didn't move. She just watched him take the last physical piece of her family and disappear around the corner. When I arrived 3 days later, there was nothing left but an empty water bowl and a dark stain on the concrete where she'd been lying. Her body had started to shut down by then. The dehydration had caused her paws to crack and bleed. Her ribs were visible through her fur, each breath shallow and labored. The sun had blistered the exposed skin on her nose and ears. But still, she stayed. Without the bag, she pressed herself against the curb where it had been, like she was guarding a ghost. I think that's when she truly gave up hope. Not when her family left, but when even the memory of them was stolen. Yet she remained, because leaving meant admitting they weren't coming back, and admitting that was worse than dying. When I knelt down beside her that day, she looked at me with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. I'd seen that look before in rescued animals, the internal war between survival instinct and the crushing weight of betrayal. I spoke softly, trying to earn her trust, but her eyes kept darting back to the road. Every few seconds, her ears would perk up at the sound of an approaching engine, and I could see the flicker of hope that still burned somewhere deep inside her. Then a silver sedan rounded the corner. Not the same one, but close enough. Her body went rigid. Before I could react, she lurched to her feet and stumbled toward it, her legs barely able to hold her weight. She made it 3 steps before her front legs buckled and she collapsed face first onto the scorching asphalt. I rushed to her, scooping her up as gently as I could. She weighed almost nothing, her body limp in my arms. But even as I carried her to the van, her head turned back toward that spot on the curb, her eyes wide with what I can only describe as panic. She wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid of leaving. Because if she left, how would they find her when they came back? I whispered promises I wasn't sure I could keep as I placed her on the blanket in the back of the van. The moment I closed the door, she began to whine, a sound so broken it made my chest ache. The drive to the clinic took 12 minutes, but it felt like hours. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching her struggle to stay conscious. Her eyes would close, then snap open again, like she was fighting against something invisible. When we finally pulled into the clinic parking lot, I carried her through the doors and into a blast of air conditioning. The temperature drop was instant and merciful. That's when she let go. Her body, which had been held together by nothing but willpower and misguided loyalty, finally surrendered. Her eyes rolled back, her muscles went slack, and I felt her heartbeat stutter against my chest. The vet team took her from my arms and rushed her into the examination room. I heard shouting, medical jargon I didn't fully understand but recognized as urgent. Someone called for an IV. Someone else yelled about her core temperature. I stood in the doorway, frozen, watching them work on her. Her tongue lolled out of her mouth, pale and dry. Her breathing was so shallow I couldn't tell if she was still alive. The lead vet looked up at me, his face grim. "She's in shock. Her organs are starting to fail. We need to stabilize her now." I nodded, unable to speak. They inserted the IV line, administered fluids, wrapped her in cooling blankets, and all I could do was watch this dog, who'd done nothing wrong except love the wrong people, fight for a life she'd nearly given up on.
She slept for 12 hours straight. The vet said it was her body's way of trying to heal, but as I sat beside her kennel watching her twitch and whimper in her sleep, I knew she wasn't resting. She was still on that roadside. Her paws would paddle against the blanket like she was trying to run. Her nose would lift and sniff the air, searching for a scent that wasn't there. Sometimes she'd let out a small, broken bark, the kind that comes from deep in the throat, almost like a sob. I wondered what she was dreaming about. Was she chasing the silver sedan? Was she guarding the green bag? Was she still waiting, even in sleep, for a family that had thrown her away like garbage? When she finally woke up, her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the fluorescent lights and white walls. She didn't move, just stared at the IV line in her leg, at the metal bars of the kennel, at me sitting there with a bowl of food I'd prepared for her. I slid the bowl closer. "You need to eat," I said softly. She sniffed it once, then turned her head away. The vet had warned me about this, that trauma could suppress appetite, that she might refuse food for days. But there was something else in her eyes, guilt, like she believed she was being punished, like leaving that spot on the roadside was a betrayal, and now she was waiting for someone to tell her what a bad dog she'd been. The PCR results came back on the morning of the second day. I was sitting in the clinic's waiting room when the vet called me into his office. His expression told me everything before he even opened his mouth. "It's positive," he said, sliding the paperwork across the desk. "Canine parvovirus, advanced stage. Her white blood cell count is dangerously low, and her spleen is significantly enlarged. This didn't just happen. She's been sick for weeks, maybe longer." I stared at the numbers on the page, trying to process what he was telling me. "Could they have known?" I asked. He nodded slowly. The symptoms would have been obvious. Lethargy, vomiting, bloody diarrhea, refusal to eat. There's no way they didn't know something was seriously wrong. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They didn't forget her. They didn't lose her. They knew she was dying, and they dumped her on the side of the road with a bag of toys, like she was trash they didn't want to deal with anymore. I walked back to her kennel, and she looked up at me with those sad, exhausted eyes. She'd given them everything, her loyalty, her love, her unwavering faith that they'd come back, and in return, they'd sentenced her to die alone on a burning roadside because treating her was too expensive or too inconvenient. The vet appeared beside me. "Her chances aren't good," he admitted, "but if we start aggressive treatment now, she might pull through." I pressed my hand against the kennel door. "Then we start now."
I named her Bella on the third day of treatment. She needed an identity beyond the roadside dog, something that reminded her and me that she was worth fighting for. The treatment protocol was brutal. 4 small meals a day to rebuild her strength, though she barely touched them at first. Subcutaneous fluids every 6 hours, anti-nausea medication, antibiotics to fight secondary infections, vitamins to boost her devastated immune system. Her spleen was so swollen the vet could feel it through her abdomen, pressing against her other organs, making every breath uncomfortable. I watched her flinch every time the needle went in, but she never snapped or growled. She just took it, like she'd taken everything else life had thrown at her. On day 4, something shifted. I brought her breakfast, plain boiled chicken and rice, and set it in her kennel like I'd done every meal before. She sniffed it, then looked up at me, not past me like she'd done on the roadside, at me, and then she took a bite. It was small, tentative, like she was testing whether she was allowed. But she swallowed it, and then took another. I felt tears sting my eyes as I watched her eat. It wasn't much, maybe a quarter of the bowl, but it was progress. It was her deciding, for the first time since I'd found her, that maybe surviving was worth it. "Good girl, Bella," I whispered. Her ear twitched at the sound of her new name. Day 5 of treatment started like the others: early morning medication, a small meal, fluids. But when I opened her kennel door to check her IV line, something was different. Bella lifted her head higher than she had in days. Her eyes, which had been dull and lifeless, had a spark in them I hadn't seen before. And then it happened. Her tail moved. Just once, a small, hesitant wag against the blanket. But it was there. The vet saw it too and broke into a smile. "That's what we've been waiting for," he said, checking her chart. "Her white blood cell count is coming up. She's fighting back." Over the next 2 days, the tail wags became more frequent. She started finishing her meals. She'd watch me when I entered the room, her ears perking up at the sound of my voice. On day 7, I sat on the floor beside her kennel, and she pressed her nose through the bars to sniff my hand. When I reached in to pet her, she didn't pull away. The test results that came back that afternoon confirmed what we'd been hoping for. Her viral load was decreasing. Her organ function was improving. Her body was finally winning the war. The vet pulled me aside. "She's going to make it," he said quietly. "I didn't think she would, but she's going to make it." I went back to Bella's kennel and opened the door. She looked up at me, and this time her tail didn't just wag, it thumped against the floor with real enthusiasm.
While Bella was recovering, I'd filed a report with Animal Control. It took them 2 weeks to track down her previous owner using the microchip that was still registered in his name. When they confronted him, he didn't deny it. He admitted he'd dumped her because she got sick and the vet bills were too expensive. He showed no remorse, no concern for what had happened to her. Animal Control cited him for animal cruelty and neglect, and his name was added to the registry that prevents him from owning pets in the future. But honestly, I didn't care about him anymore. Bella was coming home with me. On the day of her discharge, I brought her a new collar, soft purple fabric with a silver tag engraved with her name and my phone number. I'd prepared a bed in my living room, bought new toys that I kept in a wicker basket, not a trash bag. When I opened the car door at my house, she hesitated just for a moment. Then she stepped out, her legs still a bit wobbly, but strong enough to carry her up the front steps. I opened the door, and she walked inside like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. She sniffed every corner, investigated every room, and finally settled on the dog bed by the window. As she curled up, her tail wagging softly, I kneeled down beside her. "You're home now, Bella, and I'm not going anywhere." She looked at me with those eyes that had seen so much pain, but now held something different: trust, hope, love. Her tail thumped 3 times against the bed, and she rested her head on the cushion with a deep, contented sigh. Bella is healthy now, and her eyes are full of a light I thought was gone forever. She has a home where the doors never lock her out, where her toys stay in a basket instead of a trash bag, and where love isn't conditional on her being convenient. If you've read her story and felt your heart ache for a dog waiting on a roadside, ask yourself, could you live with the silence if you walked away? Subscribe now to join our family of people who refuse to let animals suffer in silence. If you leave this page without hitting that button, ask your conscience, will you be another person who walked past a soul in need, or will you be the one who helped dogs like Bella find their way home?